All right, please come in. We're going to get started. Welcome everyone to this session. My name is Vincent Caldeira. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Red Hat in Asia Pacific. I usually live in Singapore, but I spend a lot of my time traveling around the region. India is a very frequent destination for me. Most importantly, because we have a lot of open source contributors and engineers across various sites, but also we have very exciting ongoing work with a number of partners, and one of them is NxtGen, and I'm very pleased today to introduce Raj with me in this talk around sovereign AI. Raj, welcome to this talk. We've seen you this morning, but do you want to go through a quick introduction as well for these people who are just joining us?
Yeah, thank you, Vincent. I'm Rajgopal. I'm the CEO of NxtGen Cloud Technologies. We built quite a lot with Red Hat. We'll go through that stuff as we go along today's presentation.
All right, thank you, Raj. So the topic we are covering today is really about sovereign AI. You've already heard about it quite a fair bit this morning during some of the keynotes, but we are really going to focus on the infrastructure building problem, right? And really especially on what India is doing to ensure that we have access in this country to key resources, models, capabilities to make sure that India has an AI future. So let me start with a bit of a backdrop. When you start to look at the world today in terms of AI access, we are actually not really in a situation of fairness or equal access at all. A few key statistics. There's only 24 countries in the world today that have access to high-end accelerator. So those are the high-end models, mostly from NVIDIA. And these are the accelerators that are powerful enough to train frontier model. So that severely limits which country actually can do this on their own data or provide their own model. In addition, if you look at the technology itself, right now, 95% of accelerators that are racked in your data center powering this AI revolution are actually NVIDIA only, which means there is a huge supply chain dependency for countries to have access to the acceleration capability. So we've seen a number of trends globally that are really contributing to this movement that initially was extremely globalized to something that is more distributed and within the national borders. The first trend is really around national interest. If you are looking at government today, India obviously is an example, but it's pretty much across the entire Asia Pacific, I can guarantee you. Most governments are building AI policy to safeguard economic interest as well as national security. That is extremely important. It's commonly believed that a lot of ability for business to grow in the next few years is going to be dependent on the access to AI and compute. So economic growth has become ultimately dependent on access to these resources and capability. If you look at critical infrastructure as well, we've heard extremely good stories this morning about India digital payment. Let's think about this, right? When you start to process billions of payments at this scale, how do you scale fraud management? Can you still have a bunch of people looking at straight-through processing of payment transactions for India? Absolutely not. You need to have access to artificial intelligence to do this, right? So all this growth, this scale that you've heard, sure, open source is going to help a lot build the tech, but open source without open source AI is not going to be sufficient. Second trend is infrastructure control. Most countries that are able to and have the scale are now building private capacity of acceleration across country to make sure that they have this access to the resources if there is disruption in the supply chain. Yeah, so what happens if you start not having delivery of GPU, or if your cloud provider of choice suddenly decide to prioritize some other country or some other type of enterprise over you? How will you react to this? You build your own capacity. That obviously drives another angle, which is regulation. Asia Pacific is not right now the most regulated of continent, to be honest. We see this a lot in EU in particular. EU has passed the EU AI Act. If you are interested, I would suggest you have a look at it, because I reckon probably in the next few years or so, you'll have very similar laws in most parts of Asia Pacific. EU AI Act start to look at model provider, force the model provider to have transparency on the models they provide. This transparency includes data set, it includes sustainability elements as well, how much resource you actually use to provide the model, and so on. This is what AI regulated is going to look like in the future, because we are looking at a scarce access to resources. Right? And so people will want to make sure that they are used efficiently, and there are some common laws and regulation around it. Interesting statistics, if you look at the top 75 countries in the world, we already see 27% of AI workloads subject to regulatory environments, right? And this is growing very rapidly. Last but not least, cultural relevance. I finish with this because obviously very dear to India. We've heard, and I always use this analogy, right? I think kind of last year there was this research paper that explained that now we've reached a training frontier with model, because we are able to feed the entire internet inside the training of state-of-the-art model. And I was like, that's interesting, but it's a very Western view, because the internet is actually mostly Western content. So now if you think about India, if you think about Middle East country like Arabic, is obviously a lot of content out there that is not quite used in training all the state-of-the-art model. So we haven't quite reached that frontier yet for local specific cultural content. Yeah. And so we need to plug this gap, and we have to do it locally, because it's not going to be done by OpenAI or Anthropic for you. Yeah. So I'll move to the next stage then, because we've seen this globally, but then in India, we have India AI as an initiative, and I invite Raj, because he's very close to that initiative in particular, to explain how he sees it and how he perceives this initiative from the point of view of an Indian cloud provider in particular.
Yeah, actually, for us, we were serving about 1,000 odd customers in India, and we host about petabytes of data. So natural progression for us was to move into AI services. But what happened, we saw Indian government actually launching an initiative called India AI. It's under Ministry of Information Technologies. It's not just that, so the mission is actually pretty comprehensive in nature, and no other country I'm aware of has got such a comprehensive approach to developing AI in the country. So the idea is we build stuff that is required for AI, and then we also promote usage of it across the country. That's the broad mission of India AI. One of the things that they did is that they put about $1.2 billion, that is 10,500 crores of capital available to actually fund GPU access. So we are one of the service providers, the three who are giving GPUs now. So we're one of the service providers who've committed GPUs to Government of India, where they provide subsidy to any of you who are building any projects. So there's a nice portal, you go upload your project and ask what are the resources that you need. These guys can give you subsidy up to 40%. I am aware of one or two cases where people have given subsidy up to 100%. So you can leverage that. You have access to GPU capacity, which you normally don't find in any other country in India. Apart from this, I think in the India AI project, they're propagating the skill. They're trying to build the skill at various levels. A lot of work is happening there. Building ethical frameworks for actually running. There are data sets which are available for us to train. So they have something called AI Coach, where public data sets are available that we can leverage to actually train models. So there are a few things that Government of India is doing. Just to give you a perspective, the amount of action that's happening there, there are 54 projects which are related to building large language models. I mean, so all of them require 1,000 GPUs or more, and at least 6 months of training. There are also about 308 projects which are like submitted by various other people which are doing some specific use cases for India. So I think you all need to participate in that and leverage the phenomenal opportunity that Government of India has done. So this is related to how, what Vincent was saying, right? This is about building that self-reliance in terms of how AI will be leveraged in this country. We are not really dependent in terms of technology to actually be imported every single time. So we do have chat GPTs and all that, but they're not sensitive to our cultural requirements. They don't understand most of this stuff deeper than what is generally available. So I think we are putting a lot of effort to actually make that thing possible with our own language models and domain specific things. I mean, so once those things come into play, it's a great thing for the country to leverage and hopefully go towards self-reliance on artificial intelligence.
Great, thank you, Raj. So we are at the Open Source Summit, so of course, our focus today as well is not just sovereignty, but also how open source can accelerate the build towards sovereignty as well. So I'll start again with some view of the key layer. So if you are going to build an AI platform, you are going to need to manage the accelerator, the GPU, right? So there's really an infrastructure level that has to be built. And then you start to move up the stack to provide what we call AI as a service, as a general terminology. Is how you provision the resource easily to people who use them. Most of you may be developer. You have probably zero interest to go to OpenStack level or even to do kernel improvements, right? You just want to build AI use case. So how do we actually give you access to these resources is extremely important. And then if we move again up the stack a little bit, we have the model. There's always been a lot of visibility on the model. So I'll start with this. And also because I think if you look at the diagram here, it's very telling. From the time in 2022 when we started to look at Gen AI, and obviously at that point, there's only really closed source proprietary alternative that are available to us. But this entire excitement and technology inputs into capability has led to somewhere end of 2024, we already see a convergence of performance of open source model with the cloud source. We've got the Western models, the Llama from Meta. We've got the Eastern model with Qwen, with DeepSeek, coming from China. We've got the European model, with Mistral from my, dear French country. And all of this very quickly, thanks to open source, converging to very similar performance and benchmark as the closed source alternative. Not to say there is no use for those kind of proprietary and closed source alternative at all. They are extremely easy to access and use. But now the good news is you can actually quickly build a foundation model as a service with open weight model readily available on Hugging Face or other kind of hosting platform. So that is fantastic for the community to build on. If now we go below the stack, is how do we make the model available? And how do we make sure that in the process of consuming the infrastructure, we don't lock you to one single provider of accelerator? A fantastic example of project in that space is called VLLM. VLLM is the open source reference standard for inference at scale. And I would say today, even if you look at a proprietary stack like NVIDIA NeMo, actually supports VLLM as well under the hood to provide distributed inference at scale. And the reason for this is there is a huge community of contributors in VLLM that has been painstakingly providing code contribution to optimize the use of accelerator. Right? People, especially in university, who have to work with very limited amount of resource, right? Their budget is set for the year. They've been really spending a lot of time to make sure they get a lot of value from this hardware. And you can access all that through essentially a project. I think that gets downloaded now, probably 50,000 times a day or so, right? VLLM is just a huge success. But VLLM, if you kind of start to look as well what it supports, any kind of accelerator. In fact, we have a concept of hardware plugin in VLLM that allows any accelerator provider to automatically become self-supported on VLLM. So there's a pathway. Irrespective of whether you are a Korean GPU provider or Japanese GPU provider, you can actually do it. This is amazing because I'm actually seeing the emergence of new GPU, new NPU from Asia Pacific, really actually providing viable alternatives to some of the use cases in AI. Yeah, and to finish, and it's not here, but let's not forget it because we have KubeCon over the next 2 days. Kubernetes has really become the de facto platform to orchestrate AI workload at scale. In fact, none even of the proprietary firms like OpenAI wouldn't even be able to train the new ChatGPT without Kubernetes at the scale at which they are operating. So that's the good news because all this technology is open. And we'll move now to, obviously the reality of things and really starting with the infrastructure and how NxtGen has actually used a number of these open source platform and technology to build the infrastructure layer.
Yeah, so we were earlier working on VMware, and we really wanted to provide an alternative to the global service providers. One of the things that was happening was the sovereignty trend that our customers were demanding. So we thought we will go after this open source. So we collaborated with Red Hat. We actually started playing with open source quite a long time back because enterprise storage systems were not actually serving a cloud service provider kind of grade because we run hundreds of thousands of workloads and you don't get that performance that you need. So we initially played with ZFS, but then we settled on Ceph. We've been working with Ceph for quite a long time. So our first journey and value realization was coming from Ceph. And that's how we started. Ceph actually replicates between sites for us, provides very high availability for our customers. Now what has happened is that the functionality of Ceph improved over a period of time. It leverages NVMe pretty well because all our storage today in production is NVMe. And we are able to now offer all kinds of, it's like a unified storage platform for us. A customer wants NFS object or, file, whatever they want. We can serve from a single platform. So Ceph actually helped us unify our storage thought process. And we are highly successful, ridiculously stable. From 2017, when we first rolled out our public cloud, till now, we've never gone down. So that's the confidence with which we can tell you that it's got built-in redundancies that can ensure that it can run production-grade workloads. As I told in the other session, we are running very, very large population-scale applications on this platform, and it runs very well. On top of Ceph, of course, one of the important things is we take a cloud platform to our customers so that they can quickly deploy their applications and scale on demand. That is achieved with OpenStack, and OpenStack is how we were able to build a lot of flexibility into what we are offering. More importantly, the speed of offering, right? We are not waiting for some service provider, some technology provider to upgrade, match what is demanding in the enterprise space. And that's what we leverage with, with OpenStack. Today, OpenStack, we are running one generation behind, usually to ensure that, we are comfortable with the platform, and that's how we are doing. My team were actually struggling with automation because, that was, you had to write code. The infrastructure people are not familiar with code. But today with GenAI, that's become very, very simple. You just go to a AI model, ask for a script, and it generates a script, and then you can go and run it. So Ansible has been a boon, especially when you run stuff at very large scale, when you're running stuff for thousands of customers, each one having hundreds of workloads. So when you're doing that, Ansible is a great advantage to have. Of course, finally, the operating system of our preference at the hardware layer, at our build-out layer, and OpenStack, and then within the workloads is Red Hat. We've built our own API. Based on the APIs available, we built our own CMP. It's always, as a service provider, we want to exercise as much control over infrastructure as possible. So we don't want to outsource building CMPs to other service providers, other application providers. We build it ourselves. And then we maintain it so that, we have a new bundle or a new feature to announce. It is just our team to actually put it up into the portal and for our customers to access. So that's how we've approached it. It is a 100% open source achievement. It doesn't end with this. Even our own internal collaboration is running on Mattermost. I mean, and we leverage open source to the best possible outcome. More importantly, open source powers our business. And our partnership with Red Hat is what gives it that stability and the confidence to our customers that, this is secure and it's got, I mean, if you get into trouble, we've got Red Hat behind us and they will support us. So open source journey has been pretty smooth for us.
So that is cloud infrastructure. And then, of course, we just cover this, right? I think it's extremely important for the majority of developers, in particular, who want to consume AI. I think increasingly we are asked about inference as a service, tuning as a service, model as a service, right? There's all sorts of kind of concept out there. But essentially, I guess people want an API to get the things that they're trying to do done in a kind of automated and easier way, right? So we really kind of look at Kubernetes at providing this orchestration capability, this as a service construct. And again, NxtGen has been building most of its upper layer capability on Kubernetes, with obviously still a lot of opportunities to do more. Maybe you can cover that as well, Raj?
Yeah, so the thought process on AI was that we were not going to get entangled only with NVIDIA. While that's the market demand, I mean, we have to, be with the market. It is important to understand that, there are other GPUs that are emerging and we can leverage them for their own best outcomes that they provide. It could be cost, it could be performance, whatever. So it was right from beginning when we thought of an AI platform, we thought we were looking for a unifying layer, which will actually ensure that I'm able to bring in new GPUs and then keep plugging into it, and I'm not stuck to one platform. While the majority, 90% of the infrastructure is NVIDIA today, we have AMD and we have Intel, and we're also working with IBM on some new things. I mean, so the beautiful part is that we are perhaps the only ones who can proudly say that we have a unifying platform, which is OpenShift. So what OpenShift does for us is that it abstracts the underlying GPU infrastructure and allows the customer to focus on his own AI use case and then the model to leverage the underlying GPUs. And as Vincent mentioned, without Kubernetes, without containers, AI doesn't exist. I mean, everything was built on Kubernetes. And this is the best platform we found to actually run Kubernetes very well, especially all the AI workloads. Additionally, I think, it has an added flavor of the AI version, where you have access to many other tools. We use something called InstructLab. You should work with it. Actually, it's pretty cool. You can actually talk to the, you can build a use case by actually chatting with the model. So that's how it's intended to be. So OpenShift actually provides us a nice platform. Today, it actually helps us standardize our process in terms of how we build an use case for a customer. And it supports the entire life cycle of actually, building out the use case itself. What we also did was we put certain models out in the public. So we hosted some models on OpenShift, and then we hosted for general public to use so that we can understand what kind of usage and concurrencies that we can achieve. Because for an infrastructure operator, having optimized infrastructure is most important for us. That's how our business runs. You can't have too much of infrastructure or too little infrastructure. Too little will impact the customer. Too much will impact my business. So we put some models out, publicly hosted models. ADA is for a developer. We've got quite a big user group there, and we've got something called Aurora. Now we are culminating everything into something called M. But the idea of doing public models was that when people use it, we kind of understand what's happening in terms of how the infrastructure will behave, how does it scale. Most importantly, how much concurrency can I achieve? This is what we were trying to understand. So in terms of achieving a complete platform for running AI workloads, our objective is to build an inference and enterprise inference market and lead it. When we're doing that, I think having OpenShift was the key component to ensure that underlying factor, we have flexibility in terms of the GPUs we can have. and a lot of automation and agility that it brings to building out use cases and running it for our customers.
Absolutely. So we've discussed the platform so far. We've gone through a number of technology. There's really a topic I would like to add on, however, is the topic of trust. That topic is extremely important in the concept of sovereign AI. One of the dimensions of having open technology, open data, and kind of open sourcing what you are doing with AI really is tied to, as a user, how much you can actually understand of the process behind it and get the assurance that you can have a look at the risk of using the technology. Using a black box AI model comes with a number of probably risks that you can probably go around a little bit by doing your own evaluation, your own testing, but there'll always be this kind of feeling that, did I miss anything? So the way we are looking at it as well from an open source AI point of view is starting to relook at how we could use an open source supply chain to build trust in the AI model and the construct itself. And that is extremely powerful capability for sovereign AI provider. But let's kind of go back to what problem we are actually solving. So I'm sharing with you actually some results of a very recent report from Stanford University. They do a yearly report on the Artificial Intelligence Index. And one of the dimensions was looking at enterprise use of AI. And you don't need to see like the detail, but essentially this is a list of AI risk. And enterprise were asked which AI risk is relevant versus which one is actively mitigated. You will see a constant 10 to 15% point difference between those risks being actually faced and actually being mitigated as well on the other end. So that means there's a constant situation here where the innovation in AI is going ahead of our ability to almost keep it under control. And that is a very worrying trend. So the way we look at it is, can we actually use open source project, community methods which have solved the trust problem in the software supply chain in the past and extend it to AI? And the rough answer is, I think yes, although there's still a lot of work to do. And we are looking at this from 3 pillars. The first pillar is transparency. You'll hear a lot about open source model. Won't do a whole session on it, but a lot of open source so-called models are not open source. They are maybe at best open weight, meaning that the provider will give you access to the model weight so you can do your own tuning. And on top of that, they probably give you some documentation. Sometimes the documentation is limited, sometimes it's extensive. It could include even the code or the data set that was used or even some of the evaluation benchmark that were run in detail. Sometimes you will not have access to anything. So what's very important to provide a choice of model and technology is also to provide visibility onto those components that actually make the model. So that's the principle of transparency. If you are interested in this, I have a session this afternoon where I'll go in detail around what we are doing from an open source perspective to promote transparency, perspective, and capability. That leads to the second pillar, which is security and supply chain. The supply chain of AI is relatively different from a traditional software supply chain. And one of the key reasons for this is the most important element in AI is actually data. So to the extent that a lot of the data that goes into those frontier models today is entirely not disclosed to you, you actually have very little clue or ability to understand the model output and to explain them. And that is kind of frightening. So we need to do something about it, especially when this technology is going to be conditioning some of the decision and workflow in our critical infrastructure. Yeah, if I tell you I'm now deciding to give you a banking loan for your business based on an open AI model, here's the model bias, right? Yeah. We really need to know. And so the last bit of this is, irrespective of how much ability and capability we put in the supply chain, we are also going to need to invest into evaluation and risk management for this technology. And here, I guess the biggest challenge we have is there is tons of benchmark out there, but you realize first that provider can really play easily with the benchmark. You can retrofit the capability into the model to score very well, to the extent that the benchmark don't mean anything. That is scary. And also, most of the benchmarks are model-specific. They are not use-case-specific. And so there's a lot of work to do in that area to actually promote more trust. So a lot of what we are doing as well with partners such as NxtGen, when we are looking at the higher layer, which is the model as a service, is how we can promote open source technology that will give you the tooling to manage the supply chain, understand the transparency of model and components, and also perform your own evaluation. And so that's extremely important. So we'll finish this with a few key aspirational topics of discussion. I wanted to really ask you, Raj, about some of this, right? It's really the next steps for India. We've heard this morning, I would say on the left side, two angles. This infrastructure is helping to promote new idea, new innovation, new business, the local innovators on one end. And then on the other end, accelerating some really important national priorities as well. We heard about financial inclusion. We heard about Indian agriculture, how we can help people who don't have access to technology to optimize the way they do some work. So how does this opportunity and mission kind of gel with what NxtGen is doing?
Yeah, as I said, today short-term opportunity for us is that India is building certain models for itself. We serve it in terms of providing the infrastructure and the platform to build it. But I think in the medium term, which is like 2 to 5 years, I mean, we want to build out an enterprise inference market, which will be much bigger, where we make tangible real-life outcomes delivered to every citizen of India. So I think the beautiful thing is that government believes that AI is the way to go. They've done some benchmark stuff in terms of UPI and stuff like that, and today they want to do the same thing with AI. So as India catches up in terms of building its technology, short term we want to, as NxtGen, we want to leverage open source more technologies and then provide services. But more importantly, today we want to just work with our enterprises and build use cases so that more usage of AI starts coming to the everybody's hands. It's more accessible to everybody.
Yeah, that's a very lofty mission. And really to conclude, I think it was very interesting this morning. We also heard as well how India actually can start to become a global model for sovereignty globally. I actually believe in this kind of 100%. I'm obviously part of an American company, but I'm based in APAC. I've been in APAC for 25 years. And I really see how fast India has managed to adopt some of this technology to solve critical infrastructure problems at scale. And that is very impressive. I don't think you will find this in other parts of the world, to be honest. So you really have to kind of take this, you should be proud of it. At the same time, there's still a lot of work to be done and a lot of opportunities. And essentially, I think that a lot of the rest of the world that is a bit behind, but probably in similar situation as India maybe a decade ago, in need of this critical infrastructure and capability, they can really take example on India on how the use of open source has really fast-tracked the adoption of this capability, as well as developing your own people. I mean, this is very important to see that is very much in line. Right? You can have the open source technologies out there, right? It's in GitHub, anyone can use it, but you still need the people to go and pick it up and build a use case. So we are totally seeing this in India, and I look forward to being here again with you. I mean, at least we'll be in Mumbai next year, so we'll be in Mumbai talking about what happens next. Thank you for your attention, and glad we were able to share with you a bit on open source and AI sovereignty here today. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for attending it.